We have Dr. Jesse Daystar with Cotton Incorporated and Dr. Gary Adams with National Cotton Council to tell us about the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol. So I will turn it over to you guys.
Great. Thanks a lot for the introduction. And it's really great to see everybody on the call. I know we usually have a lot more meetings and get to share coffee in person, maybe a breakfast or a dinner. So it's nice to catch up a little bit by Zoom as much as possible. So today we're going to talk about the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol. And I'm going to start out mainly focusing on the why and kind of the context as a high-level sustainability. Dr. Gary Adams is going to get into the overall program and how you get through it and how do you enroll. So I have some slides. Can we make my screen? Here we are, share screen. Great. All right, can everybody see that? Perfect. Well, thank you so much. So yes, we're going to get into the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol and how it's really helping us preserve our future as a U.S. cotton industry. So you may have noticed that through time, sustainability is becoming more and more important, not only to supply chains, but you're seeing it more often, particularly around perhaps microplastics, plastic pollution, which is perhaps maybe a good thing for cotton, but overall there's a bigger focus and emphasis on understanding how our decisions, our clothing, and things we buy impact the environment. And brands are certainly under this pressure, but it's really being driven largely by consumers and their care for the environment and want to be able to purchase a good or garment that they can trust has a reasonable or responsible impact on the environment. Some recent research we did at Cotton Incorporated showed that within Generation Z, so a bit younger than myself, but the kind of the up and coming buying class who are around maybe 18 now, they really do care about many things, of which climate change, pollution, and too much waste are three of the top things they really do care about. So if we're looking towards the future of where our buyers are going to be, certainly climate change and sustainability is top of mind for those consumers. We need to be ready to be able to tell our story because we have a pretty darn good one. We've done very well through time, but we have to be proactive in telling our story to these new consumers. Another important kind of piece of the pie here, or moving piece, is the European Union. They're coming out with more and more regulations around sustainability. For instance, initially they had outlawed or banned certain types of disposable plastics. And that really caused a really shift in the market. And they're looking now towards how they can better quantify and measure the environmental impacts of the apparel industry and how they can limit or reduce those through time. So there's ongoing regulation being made, and that's in our future. So we need to be prepared for that as a U.S. cotton industry to make sure that our data and our story can be told to the brands and consumers in that market, because that is an important market. So yes, because of the consumers, because of the regulation, the brand supply chains are under significant pressure to better have data, traceability perhaps, to reduce their impacts, and to be able to tell the story of where their cotton perhaps came from, or to make sure that they are responsible so that consumers can trust that they're buying a garment that is perhaps reasonable and responsible for the environment. The good thing is the U.S. cotton industry has gotten a lot better through time. Over the last 35 years, you can see how we've improved in land use, soil loss, water efficiency, energy, and greenhouse gas emissions. We've made drastic leaps and bounds by really being innovators and implementing the best technology where we can, precision agriculture, better genetics and seeds. We are the leading edge of what cotton producing can be. And you can see it in the data. However, looking retrospectively is important, and we definitely need to do that. But we're kind of pivoting to a time where brands are looking forward. Regardless of what we have done, we have to look forward to where we're going and what are the needs of the future. And that's what brands are really doing, so we also have to do that. For example, science-based targets is a system or an organization that is helping brands make greenhouse gas emission reduction goals that are in line with a 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius climate change increase. So it's essentially helping brands make commitments around their reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. And for example, 59 brands, last time I checked, were already committed to reducing their greenhouse gas emissions. And there's some big names in here. It's Ralph Lauren, Fruit of the Loom, Adidas. That was just in 2020 alone, who have joined to make these science-based targets to reducing your greenhouse gas emissions. A more concrete example is Levi's. They have committed to reducing their greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2025. So that's a pretty significant reduction, and that's coming up 5 years from now. But we, as a U.S. cotton industry, have also made these sustainability goals, which we'll get into here in just a moment. And it's also important to, maybe you might say, well, do we have to do this? Well, I just want to point out that the competing fibers such as linsing and rayon and other cellulosic materials, they're also making these goals. And we don't want the competition to be able to say, hey, we have a solution to your greenhouse gas emission reduction goal. That's something we want to do with cotton. So that's why it's very important that not only we get better through time, but be able to tell the U.S. cotton story with data. So in 2016, the U.S. cotton industry created the 10-year sustainability goals to be met by 2025. And those are around soil carbon, land use efficiency, soil loss, energy, greenhouse gas emissions, and water use. And that greenhouse gas emissions is a very important one. As I mentioned earlier, the climate change and science-based targets is really a focal point for brands as they have made these public statements and commitments, and their shareholders and consumers are going to hold them responsible. And the fact that we created this goal really sets us up as a unique industry, a unique sourcing region where we can be a solution and be part of the brand supply chain that helps them meet their goals, which is a really important thing for them and added value. And you can see these goals through time. We've gotten a lot better, as I mentioned earlier, that 30% reduction over 35 years. But this goal where that red dot is and circle is significantly more ambitious than the trend line. But we think that by implementing more precision ag, modern technology, and also improving our yield and being more efficient with our nitrogen, meanwhile, perhaps using cover crops and reducing tillage, are all ways in which we can meet this goal through time. But these goals and certainly meeting these reductions are important, but there's another part that really is important. It's brands are committing to sourcing quote unquote sustainable cotton. What that generally means is that cotton that comes from a sustainability program, whether that be organic, BCI, or perhaps now the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol. They want cotton that has a good story, but they also want cotton that has data and a verification component, because their lawyers need and their marketing team need to work together to be able to say things about their sourcing strategy, and they need to have this come from a program. So you can see here that big brands have committed to sourcing 100% sustainable cotton, such as Levi's, Target, Walmart, Wrangler, IKEA. For example, on the right side of the screen, Target commits to 100% sustainably sourced cotton by 2022. So that would indicate that it has to come from a sustainability program. So we want to be able to sell to those big brands because they're an important part of the market. So yeah, just another slide showing you all these different areas or different brands that have made these commitments. We certainly want to keep them as our customers. But that's where the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol comes in. This is a new program which enables the U.S. cotton grower to better tell their story. They already have a lot of great data, a lot of great heritage and improvements through time and sustainability goals. This packages that all together and tells the story to the brand and perhaps to the consumer eventually, and in a way that really meets the needs of today. And I'll give you just a brief high-level overview here before Dr. Gary Adams gets into the details next. So what this program entails is certainly a voluntary enrollment. It is voluntary, but we really do encourage everybody on this call and anybody you might know to do engage with this. And it's not too bad. First, you have an enrollment where you kind of put a farm profile, and then you do a sustainability checklist where there's about 100 questions that you can go through, pretty top of mind. And then there's a little bit more of a deeper dive into something called a Fieldprint calculator, which is a little mini analysis that of a field that will do calculate your water use efficiency and perhaps your greenhouse gas emissions to really allow you to benchmark yourself against your neighbors. And then there's an independent verification on the data as well. And all of this is really primarily there to do a couple things, certainly to meet our sustainability goals by engaging with producers and helping you examine your fields and learn a little bit. We hope that this will help us get faster to our sustainability goals that we've already committed to. And that in turn really does help our customers sell their product and meet their own goals because they have very similar goals, and ultimately increasing the trust in U.S. cotton, lowering the brand risk, not only for U.S. cotton growers, but really for the Levi's and IKEAs, reducing their risk and making U.S. cotton attractive, and overall reducing the environmental impact of our operations and our clothing. So that's kind of the overall gist of where this program is going. And it is very timely and important. And we had heard a lot of feedback from groups like Target where U.S. needs to create a program yesterday or today so that we can continue to buy their cotton. Otherwise, we're going to have to go to competing programs that are sourcing cotton in other regions of the world. And we didn't like that. And that was one of the really driving forces to get this going over the past few years. So that concludes my slides. And Dr. Gary Adams is going to go into the deeper components of this within the next portion of the presentation.
All right, thank you, Jesse, and good morning to everyone. It is a pleasure to be able to join you today. I'm going to also share my screen and just kind of keep moving through a few more slides. Get it off the Weather Channel here, 23 and Eves. I've had enough winter already. But do want to take a few minutes to talk about more of the details of the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol, kind of give you an update on where we are as we're rolling out and expanding enrollment in the program. As we go through the rest of 2020 and into 2021, I would say too, want to add my thanks to both Cotton Incorporated, the team there, Jesse, Barry, Stephen, for all the support they've given both in their time and financially to the program. Thank the Cotton Board as well for all the help they've given and continue to give, particularly as they're out in the field. Encouraging participation by producers, and also add my thanks to the producers on the program or on this program who have already joined the protocol, that have participated with us in the pilot program, and to continue to provide critical feedback on the program. The website for the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol is highlighted here on this slide, trustuscotton.org. Encourage you to always kind of keep a check on that website. We're continuously updating the information that's available to producers. That's also the website that producers will go to enroll in the program, or either go back to if they want to log back in to continue to update some of their information and work through the enrollment process. Let me kind of just give you a snapshot of our progress to date. We had approximately 300 producers that participated in what we refer to as a pilot phase of the trust protocol with the 2019 crop. And again, many of you on this Zoom session were part of that pilot phase. And for that, we do thank you for going through that process with us. I would say for the 2020 crop, we hope to have somewhere between 1 and 1.5 million bales enrolled in the program. If we talk about a range on producers, we'd like to see somewhere between 500 and 750 producers that enroll on this year's crop. I think as I last looked at the data within the Trust Protocols platform, we probably have about 500 producers that are at some point in phase in the enrollment process, and that does include the ones that went through the pilot phase as well. So we're starting to get, I think, some bigger numbers, but we still need to continue to push forward in enrollment. I think it's important to get a lot of producers enrolled in the program, and hopefully by 2025, if the demand is there, and we believe the demand will be there, just given some of the charts that Jesse shared with you and how some of the brands and retailers already have goals to be sourcing 100% sustainable or responsibly produced cotton by 2025. We would like to see half of U.S. cotton enrolled in the program. We have been over the last several months really targeting enrollment with mills and manufacturers, as well as the brands and the retailers. I believe right now, as I was just getting an update on the enrollment progress, we have somewhere around 80 mills that have enrolled in the program. So a good start there, both US based as well as internationally based. And we're starting to get 2 or 3 brands and retailers to join as well. So we're encouraged about the progress that we've made. And I think we're encouraged about the acceptance that we're seeing from the textile supply chain, because we know they're under greater scrutiny, as Jesse mentioned, and I think it's critical that we have a successful program like the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol to make sure that we continue to have access to those markets going forward, and that we're not left out of any of the sourcing options. Let me just kind of briefly talk about how producers go about joining the program, and just a few of the a bit more detail about some of the aspects of the program that Jesse touched on. And what we believe is that there is, some definite benefits to producers. We don't want this to be just viewed as a burden or another, another layer of management that a producer has to go through. And we know it does take some time. We appreciate the time commitment that producers are going to make to join the program. But we hope also, as we get more producers enrolled, that we're able to provide feedback to the producer so that it's a benefit to them and not just something that they feel like they have to do. We want them to be able to see, one, look at their data, so as they provide responses to the questionnaire, and then also as they look at their own Fieldprint analysis, that's going to allow them to create a baseline for their operation. And then if we continue to keep that producer engaged in the program, it's going to give them that year-over-year data that they can track their environmental footprint. That is going to be, as we aggregate that information up, and we're not talking about sharing individual producer information, but really looking at aggregate responses across the enrolled fields and the enrolled producers. That's going to give us a stronger message to convey to our customers for U.S. cotton. I mean, and again, they want to see that more quantitative data, and that's really, I think, what this program can provide, is capture that information and be able to provide that information to them. And I think it does put us on that path for continuous improvement. That's such a critical part of the sustainability journey. It's not, it's not about saying one producer is better than another. It's about meeting the producer where he is. And yes, there's basic requirements to participate in the program, but we think those are attainable. And once you meet that basic requirement, I think it's really a focus on what the producer is doing today, and can we provide some feedback to them that they can look at and say, okay, there may be some opportunities to try to continue to improve going forward and reducing that environmental footprint, and hopefully also having a positive impact on the bottom line from the economic side. Other benefits that we see for the producer is that then that producer can use the Trust Protocol logo in the marketing of their cotton. I think they can be recognized as a Trust Protocol participant with their consent. We're not going to talk about their participation in the program without the producer's consent. And then we also want to maintain regular communications with the producers that we have in the program for providing news and providing other information. And we hope also, as we had identified, work with those producers and we see some of the answers to their questionnaires, if there's educational materials and insights that we can more explicitly target to those producers, we want to look at some of those opportunities as well. Some of the requirements, and again, we'll touch in a bit more detail. It is a voluntary program, so we'll go through the enrollment and the registration on the Trust Protocol's website, the self-assessment of best management practices, the participation and registration in the Field to Market Fieldprint platform. The producer is signing a statement of commitment toward continuous improvement, and then the producer is also recognizing that they could be selected for a second party or a third party verification. And this is an important part of the program. And I think as we were listening to the textile supply chain and the feedback that we were hearing and what needs to be a part of a program, they stressed, well, a couple of things. One, they stressed that the governance or the board of the Trust Protocol needed to be multi-stakeholder. In other words, it needed to be more than just the cotton industry, and it is from that perspective. We do have brands and retailers participating. We have civil societies participating in the program. We have some sustainability experts. But the other aspect that was talked about was the need for some type of independent verification to make sure that the producers are doing what they said they were doing as they answered the questionnaire, and then also as they filled out the Fieldprint analysis. We also collect information from the producer about where they gin and who markets their cotton, because that's going to be also a big part of the program as the production is uploaded and it feeds into the credit management system that allows data to be passed to the textile supply chain. So those are really the commitments from the participating producers. I talked about this earlier, selecting the gens. There will be a drop-down menu of the gens. Producers will also be able to have a drop-down menu to select the marketer that they're using, whether it's a private merchandiser or a marketing cooperative. If that's not known at the time of enrollment, producers can go back and add that information at a later date as well. The self-assessment questionnaire has gone through, I think, a lot of scrutiny, a lot of revision over the last couple of years, and to get it to the point it is today in the version that we're using as we go into 2020. Again, the pilot program, the pilot phase was important because it gave the producers the opportunity to provide feedback to us about the questionnaire and changes that we may need to make in terms of the way questions were worded, questions that should be added, questions that could be dropped. There are 9 categories, which you see there on the slide. Approximately 120 questions. There is some regionalization to the questions. So while a lot of the questions are core to all the cotton production regions, there is some variation as you move from one region to the next. And then we've also worked to have it separated for irrigated and non-irrigated, so that if a producer is completely non-irrigated in their farming operation, they're not going to be asked some of the questions on water management, for example. The answers for the questions on there are some required practices where the answer is simply that you're in compliance with those required questions. For what we refer to as recommended practices, those answers are one of 4 choices. I do now in most of my fields. I am implementing on 1 or more of my fields. I will consider in the next 3 years, and then not appropriate for my farming operation. And if the producer does answer that it's not appropriate for their farming operation, there's a drop down that gives about 4 choices for why that was considered to be not appropriate. So again, try to allow us to collect a little bit more information from the participant about why it was not appropriate for the farming operation. And then as we get more information and more producers plugged in to the program, we're going to be able for producers to see how their responses compare to the population as a whole. And we're working now with the SEAM, who is the technology company, the Memphis-based SEAM is the technology company that has developed the IT platform. We're working with them on a project to provide some summary statistics from the questionnaire, again, trying to give the producer a little bit more feedback about where their responses sit kind of in the distribution of answers from the participating producers. So I think that'll be some interesting feedback that our participants will receive as well. The second, I guess, requirement that from producers that in terms of data input into the system, and this is one, you know, I'll admit can be more of a daunting challenge when producers sit down to look at it the first time, and that is the Fieldprint calculator. And this was developed by the Sustainability Alliance Field to Market. And is an opportunity for a producer to map out their cotton fields or a portion of their cotton fields. And in the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol, a participating producer needs to select fields that are in cotton in that year that constitute at least 10% of their cotton acres. And now they obviously can do more than that, but at a minimum, we want to capture fields that the producer considers to be representative of his farming operation that constitutes 10% of those acres. Map out those fields, and then go through and provide the necessary data on the type of tillage practices that are used, the seeding rates, the fertilizers that are used, the number of passes that are made on the field with chemicals, ultimately putting in the actual yield from that field. So again, kind of working through the various categories of data that's necessary for ultimately the Fieldprint calculator to generate the metrics on key environmental indicators. And the graphic that is generated, we refer to as a spidergram. It really gives these key metrics you see there: land use, soil conservation, biodiversity, water quality, greenhouse gases, energy use, irrigation, water use, soil carbon. It will allow the producer to compare their Fieldprint analysis with a state and a national benchmark. Again, as we get more producers participating in the program, we're going to have the ability, or the producer's going to have the ability to see their results relative to, say, other participating producers in their own geographic region. So again, trying to give that producer even more feedback in terms of how their Fieldprint analysis looks. And again, hopefully, if they see some areas where perhaps greenhouse gases are not as not as good as it could be, or it sits outside the state or national benchmark, is there an area for further improvement? I do want to say a couple of more things about the Fieldprint analysis requirement, because there are within Field to Market what are referred to as qualified data management partners, and those are basically farm management software providers such as Agrible, My Farms, LandDB. There's about 6 or 7 that are listed within the trust protocol, and that you can also find on the Field to Market website. Some producers will already be using one of those softwares to input their data. That's perfectly acceptable. That can just be checked. You can check the box, and you can continue to use those qualified data management partners for that field level analysis, because that's the front end package. The information is still going, the raw data is still going up to Field to Market for the calculation, so to return the spider grant. So that's an option for producers to continue to provide this data. I would say the other opportunity for the producer is that within the Trust Protocols platform, the SEAM has developed an interface as well, so that the producer, if he's not using one of those qualified data management partners, can enter his information directly into the platform when he's in the Trust Protocols IT section enrolling in the program. So again, trying to make it as user-friendly as possible. The last couple of things I will say is that we are doing some work right now to build some additional field level templates that would have different rotations included, so that as a producer looks at the rotation that most closely matches his farming operation, we're going to add some to that drop-down menu to hopefully make it a little more straightforward for a producer to select that rotation that most closely matches his farming operation. The other resource that we're going to provide to participating producers is to have 1 or 2 people who have some in-depth knowledge of the Fieldprint analysis, and one's a gentleman that's worked on a project in Louisiana for a number of years. He's going to be a resource that we can essentially use as a help desk, if you will. So if a producer is sitting down looking at doing the analysis, we're going to give the opportunity to maybe jump on a Zoom meeting with that producer, help walk him through that process, and really try to, again, hopefully make it as easy as possible to work through this, because we do understand, I think in terms of just pulling the information together and the requirements on the producer, this is probably a little bit more burdensome than what the questionnaire is. So again, we want to try to provide as much help as we can to make this an easy process. But the final point I want to make here about the Fieldprint analysis is, I really can't overstate the importance, I think, of collecting this information and being able to aggregate this information and convey that to the brands and retailers. The questionnaire is important. That gives us what I refer to as qualitative information about management practices and the practices that are being done, and I think that is valuable. But being able to capture, I believe, what we would view as very hard data, credible data, quantitative information that can focus in on some of these key metrics that are going to be important to the brands and retailers, whether it's greenhouse gas emissions or any of these metrics. Collecting that information and being able then to start to establish first a baseline and then track that information going forward. I believe that gives us data that that really I don't believe any other program is going to bring to the table. So I do think this is an important part of the program, and really I can't stress it enough in terms of trying to get producers to this point that we have this type of field print analysis. I talked about verification earlier. It is an important part of the program. We have control union certification that will be providing third-party verification. I think that they have been favorably received, as we've talked about that group being our third-party verifier when we conveyed that to the textile supply chain. That's going to provide an integrity and assurance to the program. It's going to give those brands and retailers that assurance that the producers in the program are doing what they say they're doing. And again, we had some producers, I know some on this call went through kind of a pilot phase of the verification. So I want to thank them for helping us kind of get to where we are in this process. The control union will come out to a producer's farming operation. We're going to try to set those up sometime in the first quarter of the calendar year following harvest, hopefully catch a producer at a time when they're not as busy as other times of the year. It will probably take about a half a day for the in-farm portion of the visit, where they will come on and they will look at the producer's data. They'll look at some of the various aspects of the farming operation. The producer will be given obviously a heads up, an opportunity to prepare for the verification visit. They'll be given somewhat of a checklist of this is the information that you need to have on hand at the time of the verification visit. Hopefully that will streamline the process a bit. If there are any issues that are that come up during the verification visit, there will be a time for those issues to be corrected. So a window of time following the initial verification to get corrected. This is, by no means set up to be a gotcha. This is, or to look at anything outside the scope of the verification, of the actual verification and what's required for the trust protocol. So again, this will be a part of the program, going to target it in the first quarter of the calendar year, as I said. Again, enrollment for the 2020 crop is ramping up now. We've had a number of webinars over the last several weeks. I think there are even some more scheduled coming up over the next week or two to continue to get producers enrolled in the program. I would also want to pass along my thanks and recognition to some of the merchandising companies, marketing cooperatives, and the private merchants who have been active in helping us to enroll producers as well. So we know there's some of those, the field staff of some of those companies have been actively working with producers, and we do appreciate that. We believe the self-assessment takes about 30 to 45 minutes to complete. We believe once a producer is familiar with the data tool, the field can be entered in 20 to 30 minutes. And again, I mentioned earlier that we're looking at 500 to 750 producers in terms of our goal for enrollment for the 2020 crop. And so I'm going to just close there. And again, I do think this is an important program that's going to allow us to better demonstrate our sustainability stewardship. I think it's going to drive our commitment to continuous improvement. I would say too, just as a final point about the trust protocol, obviously this is a program that is going to be, we believe, is important to the future of U.S. cotton, to make sure we maintain the demand base for U.S. cotton, that we always have access to the markets, that we hopefully can provide information to producers that will allow them to reduce their environmental footprint. I do believe also that with a growing focus on climate change and climate change legislation, and potentially down the road some type of incentive-based climate change legislation that may come out of Congress or may come out of a Biden administration. I believe the trust protocol could have a role there to play too. Have that recognized, that some of the data that we're collecting here may be able to play a role in some of those types of programs if they materialize. So we are keeping certainly that on our horizon. We actually, a couple of us had a chance to talk to some of the USDA or the agency review team for the Biden administration that's in charge of the review of USDA, and had the chance to talk with them about the trust protocol and just some of the what is going on within the cotton industry. So we need to keep that in mind, and we certainly will, and monitor developments on that front as we go forward. I'm going to stop there, and again, thank you for the chance to provide an overview of the trust protocol, and I will stop and share my screen.
Okay, so Gary and Jesse, we've got a few questions out